Welcome to Monday, April 6th, 2026, and today is National Carbonara Day, which is one of those dishes that seems simple until you actually try to make it. Eggs, cheese, pasta, and somehow one wrong move turns it into scrambled eggs with noodles. Today in 1320, a letter known as the Declaration of Arbroath was sent from Scottish nobles to Pope John Paul XXII. At the time, Scotland was fighting for independence from England. King Edward I of England would attempt to bring Scotland under his control, and years of conflict followed. The declaration wasn't a battlefield event. It was a written argument, a statement of identity. In the letter, the Scottish nobles explained that their king, Robert the Bruce, ruled with their support. But more importantly, they made a broader claim, that the people of a nation had the right to choose their ruler, and if that ruler failed to defend their freedom, they could be replaced. That idea doesn't sound unusual today, but in the early 1300s, it was significant. Power was typically seen as something granted by divine right or inheritance, not something dependent on the will of the people. The mechanism here is communication used as diplomacy. Instead of sending armies, they sent a message, trying to influence how their situation was seen by the wider world, particularly the Pope, who held significant authority in European politics at the time. And there's a line in the letter that tends to stand out, that it is not for glory, nor riches, nor honors that they fight, but for freedom alone, which gives you a sense of how they wanted their struggle to be understood. Not just a conflict, but as a principle. And once ideas like that begin to spread, ideas about identity, competition, and representation, they tend to show up in different forms. Sometimes not in politics, but in something much more visible. On April 6, 1896, the first modern Olympic Games officially opened in Athens, Greece. The idea was to revive the ancient Olympic tradition that had taken place in Greece thousands of years earlier. But this wasn't just about sports. It was about bringing countries together under a shared event. At the time, international travel was becoming more practical, and there was a growing interest in global cooperation, at least in theory. The Olympic Games provided a way to express that. Athletes from multiple countries would compete in events like running, cycling, wrestling, and gymnastics. The mechanism behind it was simple: structured competition, clear rules, defined outcomes. But what makes it work is something less obvious: agreement. Every participating country agrees to the same standards, the same measurements, the same expectations, which allows people from completely different places to compete on equal terms. The first modern Olympics was relatively small, just over 200 athletes from about a dozen countries. But the idea scaled, and over time, it became one of the largest international events in the world, which is interesting when you think about it, because it turns competition, something that could divide people, into something shared. Of course, not every effort to explore or push boundaries comes with that kind of structure. Sometimes it's just a person moving into the unknown, hoping they're right about where they are. On this date in 1909, American explorer Robert Peary claimed to have reached the North Pole. At the time, reaching the North Pole was one of the greatest geographical challenges left on Earth. There's no land to stand on, no clear marker, just shifting ice, freezing temperatures, and a horizon that looks the same in every direction. Peary and his team traveled using sleds pulled by dogs, navigating across ice that was constantly moving and breaking apart. The mechanism for determining their position relied on celestial navigation. By measuring the angle of the sun above the horizon and comparing it to known calculations, explorers could estimate their latitude. But here's where things get complicated. Peary's claim has been debated ever since. Some historians and researchers believe he reached the North Pole. Others argue that his recorded distances and travel speeds don't quite add up. And that certainly is part of what makes this story interesting. Because unlike reaching a mountain summit, there's no permanent marker at the North Pole. No flag left behind that stays in place. Just ice that moves. So the question becomes, how do you prove you were somewhere that doesn't stay still. It's one of those moments where exploration runs into the limits of verification. And while exploring tries to map the physical world, another kind of work focuses on capturing how people see it. Which brings us to a birthday today. Raphael was born on April 6, 1483, and became one of the greatest painters of the Italian Renaissance. His work is known for its balance, clarity, and sense of proportion. Paintings like the School of Athens bring together philosophy, architecture, and human expression in a way that feels almost perfectly arranged. The mechanism behind his style comes down to composition, how elements are placed within a frame, how the eye moves across an image, how perspective creates depth on a flat surface. During the Renaissance, artists were beginning to understand mathematical perspective, how to represent three-dimensional space realistically. Raphael used that knowledge to create scenes that felt structured but still natural. And like a lot of artists from that period, his influence extended far beyond his lifetime. Because once a new way of seeing the world is established, it tends to stick. And you get a turtle named after you. If you step back and look at these moments together, something starts to take shape. A declaration defines what a nation believes it is. An international competition brings countries together under shared rules. And an explorer tries to reach a place that's difficult to even define. Different paths, different purposes. But all of them are attempts to understand position. Where you stand, who you are, and how you prove it. Anyway, those are a few of the things I ended up discovering while wandering through April 6th. Stop by tomorrow and we'll see what the next date decides to reveal.